Hello everyone, welcome to another episode. Today we're going to talk about this BBC article that came out that stated that the digital pound is basically going to happen within the decade. And this is something that the Treasury has said. I want to explain what's going on here, then also explain what's really going on behind the scenes and why this is actually not a lie, but it's not in the way that you think. Also, if you're in any country around the world, this is how your country will also operate. It just so happens that the UK is kind of at the forefront of all of this. So just because it's the UK doesn't mean you don't need to listen to this information, because you'll see this play out in your own country as time goes on as well. It's kind of like a little sight into the future as to how things are going to go. And more importantly, how things are going to be shown to you, the narrative that will be pushed upon you from the news, and how it's not lying, which is the crazy thing. It's not lying, but it's not the whole truth. So Chancellor Jeremy Hunt said that the central bank digital currency, CBDCs, would be a new, trusted and accessible way to pay, but it will not be built until at least 2025. Very interesting wording there. Then he'll obviously downplay it to make sure that anyone who's kind of doubtful would actually follow the narrative that he's talking about. So he says, we want to investigate what is possible first, like they don't already know, while first making sure we protect financial stability. And this is the key part of all of this that I'm saying. There will be a narrative pushed on all of us. We are rescuing the economy. Here's what we're going to do as a result. The economy's in a terrible situation. Here's what we're going to do to save the day. Here's my cape. Look, it says super government on it and everything. They will create this narrative to say that they are the saviors, when in fact, the whole system has pushed us to this place, and almost in a predictable way, It's kind of like it was always going to happen. Maybe part of a plan. I'm bringing all of this up to say we need to be reading these little articles that are put out on these big news forums, because they actually reveal more to us, because we are the enlightened group. We know what they're saying. Behind what they write on the screen, we know what they're saying. And a lot of people, the sheeple of this world, will actually just read this and think, there's no point in investing in any of this. They don't even have the idea to invest in it because of little things like this. Cryptocurrencies are not backed by a central bank, and the value can shoot up and down rapidly, essentially saying to the retail investor, it's a volatile market and you shouldn't explore this idea any further, at least until we've explored it and we have declared it as safe. Guess when they're going to say it's safe? After they've made their money, not before. Think about it. There's stuff about that I'm going to go into more detail, but for now, I want to read this next part because it's a nice little tangent. But while it might use technology similar to cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin and Ethereum, they're really talking to the general audience here. I know it's BBC and it makes sense, but saying similar cryptocurrencies to Bitcoin and Ethereum when we know they're talking about XRP, that hurts. That hurts. Issued by the Bank of England would be less volatile. So while it may use technology similar to cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin and Ethereum, the digital pound, issued by the Bank of England, issued by the central bank, would be less volatile, aka steady, aka a set price maybe, so that there's no fluctuations, so that there's a set fee that they can pay to allow for the $1 trillion of transactions that happen by the Bank of England every day. Makes sense? 10 digital pounds will be worth the same as £10 in cash, the Treasury says. So, what does that tell us? That tells us, first and foremost, we're talking about a retail CBDC here. When we look at the whole way that this system is going, we know, first of all, the people who run the money need to make their money first, and so they're going to handle that in the first instance. Then we'll eventually get to the retail CBDC when it's stable. So this is actually really good news, because we know by the time retail CBDCs come to fruition, retail CBDCs, the price will already be set. Think about that. So we have to look at this timeline that they're talking about. It won't happen until at least 2025. So 2025 would be the earliest point where retail CBDCs will be in place. Remember, this is a retail CBDC that needs to be stable before it's started. And we need the institutions, well, we don't need the institutions, but the institutions need to have made their money by this point already, because the price needs to be set. So when we think about that in the way of XRP and the XRP ledger and Ripple and all of this, we need to have seen XRP skyrocket to that point where it is now stable so that the retail CBDCs can now be made on top of that system. The retail CBDCs cannot come before because, as they said, the price is too volatile. We need to remove the volatility, pump the price up in order to be able to put out a stable £10, 10 digital pounds to £10 in cash at a stable rate. Like, it won't move from there. So we know this has to happen within that time frame. Now, they said it'll happen within this decade. So we're basically talking about from between 2025, because it won't happen until at least 2025 to 2030 is when the retail CBDCs will be in play. And basically meaning that we have from 2023 to 2025 for the XRP price to pump and to settle. So that means blow past $10, blow past $20, $100, wherever it's going to go, it has to reside at that spot. And I'm assuming it means it's going to have to reside at that spot for a little while to reduce retail FOMO, like people thinking they've missed out because the price has gone up so much in these assets. It has to be in a short enough amount of time for the price to actually go up from between now and 2025. But it also has to allow time on the other end for them to reduce the narrative down, but then also create this narrative where they've saved the day and they're going to then create the stable coin, right? Basically this digital currency, the digital pound, that's not going to waver. It's going to be that set price. So accounting for all the time required to get it from one stage to the next, the conclusion kind of leans us to think that this is going to be 2023 or 2024, because then that would allow them time on the back end to start molding the narrative, to start pushing through regulation for the retail CBDC in 2025 at earliest, then looking like they've saved the day. We're now out of this economic situation. Here's £30,000 a month just to have as a universal basic income. You don't have to work. We're just going to give you money because we're rescuing this whole economic situation and we are the heroes. So let's get deeper in, and we're going to start now talking about this bill. We have a bill for the financial services and markets. And this was last updated on the 7th of February, as you can see on the screen. And in the UK, we have something called a bill passage. A bill passage is basically the journey that a bill will take. If it reaches the end, then it's ultimately accepted and put into law. But the whole process up to then takes a lot of time. And as you can see, we have 3 passage sections. The first one is the bill starts in the House of Commons. It then moves through the House of Commons with a first reading, second reading, committee stage, report stage, and a third reading. We have the exact same thing in the House of Lords. These are 2 different entities in the government. And so they go through the same process, just at different times. The House of Lords comes after the House of Commons. Currently, we're at the committee stage for this bill in the House of Lords. That means we have the committee stage to get through, which I have seen can take several weeks to actually move past. I can't for the life of me find out when we started the committee stage, so if somebody knows, you please have to let me know. And by the way, this was all sent to me on a private DM on Discord by Tree Fiddy. You know who you are. Thank you very much for enlightening me on all of this. Full props to you for kind of recognizing this and going through the email process with them directly to get further answers. Tremendous work. Round of applause to Tree Fiddy in the chat, please. And so the next things we have are report stage and third reading. Now, committee stage can take several weeks to go through. Report stage is actually something that takes 1 to 2 days, so not long at all. There's a third reading that can take several weeks to conclude. Then we got the final stages. This is where things get really juicy. If we move past the bill in the House of Lords and move past that process, we then go to the consideration of amendments and the royal assent. Ultimately, this whole section at the end, this whole final stage, can take several weeks to several months to actually conclude. So this final stage can be quite a long process. And there's a reason I'm focusing on this bill, and it's because, if I just switch my screen here, part of that bill is for digital settlement assets. And I want to read elements of this bill out to you just so you can hear it, what they're saying without saying it. And I want to show something here. On my screen, I've got the bill. There's 346 pages. And before you get into it, I haven't read all 346 pages, okay? Oh, man. But what I did do is went straight to the digital settlement assets section, which is in Schedule 6. And this is also on page 136 of the document. And we can see that within this whole document, digital settlement assets came up 50 times, and the majority of them all came within this Schedule 6, Part 1, this section that I'm in right now. That's on the right here. That's all the instances of digital settlement assets. The ones at the beginning are basically telling you the pages where you can find those details. Now, as we go into it, and I want you to notice how they try to lead people away from the scent, but they can't avoid it when they're around us because we can smell what's going on. We can smell what the government is cooking. So essentially, this bill in this section is changing the wording of the bill, and that's what's going through this process. So, for example, in number 4.3, we have in subsection 1, after money, so when we're talking about whenever there's instances of money in the old bill, please insert digital settlement assets. Then you might think, okay, well, digital settlement assets could mean anything that's digital, right? It doesn't necessarily mean anything with blockchain or cryptocurrency. So then we go a little bit further down and they try to lead you off the scent here and say in subsection 1, digital asset settlement means a digital representation of value or rights, whether or not cryptographically secured. That can be used for settlement of payment obligations. I know a token. Can be transferred, stored, or traded electronically. I know a token. Which uses technology supporting the recording or storage of data, which may include distributed ledger technology. I know a technology, okay? This is just wild to read. In this section, digital settlement asset includes a right to or interest in a digital settlement asset. That's fine. And then it goes into something called a DSA provider. And this is a person who provides one or more services in relation to the payment system that includes arrangements in using digital settlement assets. So essentially what we're looking at here is we can replace DSA service provider with the likes of Ripple. Maybe there's Hedera Hashgraph in there, but it's essentially all these tokens that we're talking about, especially when we're talking about settlement assets. We're basically talking about XRP and XLM. But when we're talking about an institution to institution system, we're talking about Ripple. How do I know that? Well, I was on a little webinar the other day with the Digital Pound Foundation and all the people included in that. On the panel, there was James Wallace, who is the head of corporate bank communication or something like that. Why was he there? If he was there, do you think XLM is going to be used for this wholesale CBDC? No. James Wallace was there because Ripple are heavily involved with the regulation process for their own technology being used in this Digital Pound Foundation. Okay, it's clearly there, and it tells us in this document, in this bill, what is actually happening, right? I can't look anywhere and it doesn't tell me XRP without saying it, obviously. So a digital service provider, let's say this is Ripple in this instance, has to be the person who creates or issues the digital settlement asset involved in the payment system. What do Ripple issue? The person who provides services to safeguard and administer digital settlement assets, including their private cryptographic keys. So who gives the keys out? Who establishes these keys? Ripple. It's like that video where he says Ripple at the end of everything. It's like, that's what it's like reading this document. You just read something, you think Ripple, Ripple, Ripple. But let's go even further. The DSA service provider has to be the person who is directly involved in any of the activities mentioned in paragraphs A or B. So that is the issuance and the creation of digital settlement assets that are involved in the payment system, and those who provide services to safeguard the digital assets. The person is a digital settlement asset exchange provider. The person sets the rules and standards or conditions of access or participation in relation to the payment system. Ripple. The person provides any service that facilitates or supports a transfer of money or digital settlement assets to be made using the payment system, including any infrastructure provider in relation to the system. ILP. Any of those connections that we've talked about on that massive diagram on that video. If you haven't watched that video, click the I in the top right-hand corner. Can you see this? This is what we're talking about. This bill is being changed to essentially say, without saying these two words, Ripple or XRP, to essentially say everything that those two assets do without saying the words. It's so frustrating. And so if you have, for example, somebody random in retail environment and they come across this article on the BBC, how likely is it that they're going to go from this to think, I'm going to research the legality of this, where we are in terms of have any bills being pushed through? Are we in the process of any bills? There's a tiny percentage of retail that are going to do that. Then they would come to the UK Parliament and parliamentary bills. They would find this. They would look at the bill and how it's progressing through the stages and think, okay, how many of the people who get to this stage will then think, whoa, I didn't even think these bills were in production or in the system yet, but here we are, probably like many months, if not over a year, of bills being moved through the House of Commons, and now we're in the House of Lords. How many people get to that point of realization? And then even further than that, how many people go into the bill to see what's being changed and how it adapts to digital settlement assets? And we know the one digital settlement asset that is going to be running this system for loads of reasons, but James Wallace on the panel at the Digital Pound Foundation webinar, there's only one way this is going, guys, and it's XRP. So I say all of that to say my bullishness on this whole thing is increasing over time. And to add on to that, what we're doing here is looking at the bankofengland.co.uk. This is a document called the Digital Pound, a new form of money for households and businesses, ? And on page 65, thank you to Damien for sending this through to me. I actually finished recording and then he sent me this, so I'm just adding this into the video. This is on page 65, section 2. And it says that within the RTGS renewal program, which is what the Bank of England, the central bank, is doing, the bank's focus has been to develop a roadmap for ongoing improvements to the RTGS service, in line with the industry feedback and incorporating elements from previous proofs of concept and experiments. These have included, and one of those that it included was a cross-border synchronization test, a joint project with Ripple, demonstrating that synchronized FX transactions in two different simulated RTGS systems can be achieved. That means they were using the private ledger, the testnet ledger, to utilize one side of that, leading to the incorporation and synchronization functionality into the roadmap for renewal. Just another piece of information that is extremely bullish for Ripple and just shows how involved Ripple is with the Bank of England. And when the Bank of England are so involved with the digital pound, connect the dots. The more I know, the more I want to invest. When I look to buy my cryptocurrency, especially XRP, XLM, and XDC, and I want to move it to cold storage, I go straight to Uphold. Uphold's one of those places where they've not really caused any issues for people over the years as prices have gone up and down. They've remained strong and always given people access to their assets, which is not something that can be said about a lot of other exchanges. And over time, they've made it even easier without a holding period for a lot of different assets to actually just buy your cryptocurrency, buy your X assets, and then move them straight to cold storage. And so if you're interested in Uphold and you want to start buying these assets and you don't have an Uphold already, I think there's a little reward as well when you sign up or when you make your first deposit. But I think Uphold is basically known to be the most reliable out of all of them. You can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but that's just my view of everything here. I hope you're having a really good day. I hope this day made you a little bit more excited about XRP and these assets that we hold very closely to our hearts. Stay emotionless out there, and I'll see you in the next one.